Good morning, everyone. This is Uche Njoku, and welcome to this episode of the Sneaker Principle Podcast. Right now, I'm sitting here in New Rochelle, overlooking the Long Island Sound. It's a beautiful day, and I want to first start off by saying I am truly blessed and privileged to even be able to be sitting here right now looking at this. A lot of people out there are going through it right now. The economy. Take off these headphones. I don't know why I had the headphones on. I was coming from the gym. The economy, the increase of crime in New York City, across the country, the schools trying to set up right now and facing a lot of serious teacher shortage. There's so much just going on right now. And then upticks of COVID-19 and monkeypox. It just seems like we can't get a break. But regardless, I am definitely grateful. And I hope that that wherever you are, that you are standing in grace, and definitely, giving yourself, that grace as well. It's one thing to stand in grace; it's another thing to actually give yourself grace. This morning, I just wanted to make a quick video thanking all of you who've been leaving comments on my LinkedIn. I posted a very long, lengthy blog post about my resignation from my principalship. I am literally 2 weeks away or so from starting a whole new chapter in my life. And one thing I want to talk about real quick is the fact that a lot of people have been asking me this question about what am I doing next. I've seen in comments people saying that they've been thinking about what comes after a principalship, and one comment that I received was someone saying, I'm having serious difficulty seeing life after a principalship outside of becoming a superintendent or going to work for a district or becoming a coach or consultant, which are all viable things and good things, but my thing is what happens when you want to do more. Now, before I came into education, I was an amateur filmmaker. I was in corporate sales, doing digital design and doing document management. I was actually even an account executive in my earlier days. And those things I enjoyed thoroughly, just that I wanted more. I wanted to do more. I wanted to make a contribution. And that's when I decided that I would think about possibly going to law school, which kind of brought me to education because I thought, hey, I spent time teaching, giving back to the community as I prepared to apply to go to law school because I wanted to be a constitutional lawyer or attorney. And those 2 years in the school building, classroom/school building, turned into 17 years and me going from being a teacher, dean, all the way to be a principal. And here I am now, and I have to say, over the course of my journey, I've actually asked myself, like, what is there for a principal after the school building and beyond these other spaces that I mentioned earlier? And I couldn't find an answer. And it's funny because I've Googled principals transitioning into, corporations and other jobs and every roles, and couldn't find much, Then, of course, you meet people who are doing different things. And I remember having met principals who were doing real estate, principals who were doing tax preparation, all these things that nothing wrong with those things at all. But I was just like, there gotta be more. And I'll tell you why there has to be more. Because as a principal, at least from my experience, work as a New York City principal, I am pretty much in charge of my hiring, managing my budget, managing staff, public relations, parental outreach, making sure that we're meeting our instructional mandates and academic progress, all these different things. Then not only that, security and safety and all these things that most people would look at you and be like, let's look at me or look at other administrators and say, how the heck do you find the time to do all these things? And we do all these things. But yet it's hard to envision what corresponds or is equal to these roles outside of the school building. And I will argue that I'll make this argument. As a principal, as a assistant principal, even as a dean or a teacher leader in the building, you are an executive within a corporate structure. I would say the principal is like the CEO, president of a company. The schools that I've run have had budgets anywhere between $4 to $7 million in actual annual budgets to run the school. And if we were in the real world, not to say schools are not real world, if we were in the corporate sector, private business world, that's a relatively big company. That's a relatively big company. And to have that kind of budget, that is a successful company at that. And all these skills that we enact as school leaders can be reflected in other areas as leaders. I think the issue is, getting out of this mental block that we have that the only thing you can do is be in a school building. I love children, I love education, and I am moving to a space where hopefully I will continue to work and support schools and school leaders in those spaces, because that's what I'm passionate about. But the thing is, I can do that and not be within the system. I can do that and not be a principal or be a superintendent or deputy superintendent or any other role within the system. And that's something that I think is very, very important, that we actually really think about and consider as far as thinking about what are the possibilities beyond. Yes, it could be said that, well, by leaving, I'm creating a gap. I'm creating a hole, because good school leaders are hard to get. And I can see that. But however, I would also argue this. It is our responsibilities as leaders to produce the next generation of leaders. When I served in the military, one thing I always thought was very interesting is that we can have a squad, a fire team, a squad of soldiers, and in that squad, everybody might have a particular specialty. You might have the weapons specialist. You might have the medic, the comm person, the explosives person, the actual squad leader. You can have all those roles, but the thing is interesting. What happens if one of them falls? Somebody else in that team is going to take over that role. Why? Because even though you might be a medic and your job is specifically to make sure your teammates, if there's any injuries, that you're addressing and attending to those needs in real time, if you fall, do know that there's somebody else on the team, if not everyone, who might not have the highest level of understanding as that one person, but have the rudimentary survival skills to support that role if the key person is gone. Same thing with comms, same thing with weapons, same thing with explosives. That's how the military functions, and that's how I function as a school leader. Every one of my APs I've had have become the next one to replace me. Why is that? Because from the moment that I start in a position as a leader, I'm always thinking, if something happens to me, God forbid, in the next 2 minutes, what happens to the organization? What happens to the school? Unfortunately, too many people don't think like that. They go into spaces thinking, I'm going to be here forever. This is going to be me forever. I'm going to be here tomorrow. But the fact of the matter, that's not true. I'm sorry. I've known principals and school leaders who've died on the job. I've known people who have had breakdowns, had to leave, or things happen and they're no longer there. Then all of a sudden the school community is scrambling, trying to figure out what to do next. That should never be the case. I'm going to say this, as leaders, it's our responsibility to prepare the next generation of leaders. And there should be a pipeline. If not within the system itself, then you create your own pipeline, and that's something that's very, very important. I think I just lost my train of thought. So we were talking about, the next steps. Yes, we're talking about next steps. Outside of principalship, outside of superintendency, outside of school leadership, and then the argument about if you go, what happens to your school. So I've been principal of 2 schools. My first school is doing well. It's actually expanding. My assistant principal then became the principal and is doing a phenomenal job. And to the point where they're actually merging 2 schools together to make a bigger school. And the school I'm at right now, my replacement has been announced. And again, one of my assistant principals, who is going to do an incredible job as well, because he has the temperament and has the ability and skill set to lead. And these are the things that for me, I take into account as far as I take into account as far as my preparation to depart, but also going back to what happens next. I've been fortunate enough to have the right people around me to advise me and help me see my skill sets and how they really fit into other spaces. And I also say this, I know some of you might be looking at me like, okay, I know he's not saying this word, but I'm going to say it. Station. I've spent a lot of time over the past months, about a year, thinking about what happens next, and studying it and researching and talking about it, with trusted people. And I believe that because I did that, the universe kind of opened the door for me to start to see and meet people who have actually made the transitions. Not a lot of people. And one of them was a really good friend of mine who, in the midst of my studying and trying to figure out what could be next, took on a high-level corporate role, from being a principal to now being, working in corporate America, still in education. But and I saw that and I was like, wait a minute, this man has the same skill sets that I have, trained at the same institution that I trained at, and to be a school leader, and now is, functioning in a damn near C-suite executive role. And I was like, wait a minute. So my thesis and hypothesis is that if, as a principal, I'm doing all these roles that in corporate America and other segments are considered high-level leadership skills, I should be able to transfer into another space and leverage those abilities. And I see him doing it, and I plan to do the same thing. And hopefully in very, very shortly, I'll be announcing what my new role is and where I'm going to be working at. But again, those of you who are really thinking about like what happens next, really think about that. Start doing your studying. Again, I'm not here trying to advocate for principals to leave and abandon schools, but I am advocating for self-care, your mental well-being, and also knowing when to hang up your hat. One thing I would say is this: it's very important that in the work that we do, that the work I've done and the work that you're doing as school leader, teacher leader, assistant principal, that you function on a high level. And if you're able to function on a high level and be all in for 30 years, then do that. But however, if you're getting to a point where you're starting to question, like, okay, this might be time for me to step aside to let someone come in and continue the work so I can go rejuvenate myself and do something else. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that, again. And again, I'm going to say this. I'm not again, but I am going to say this. Too often we are intimidated and bullied, not necessarily intentionally, but also unintentionally, and sometimes intentionally bullied for making decisions that are best in our interests. Because education says that, we have to be sacrificial lambs to the profession. I don't agree with that. I agree in building up teachers and having a cadre of highly skilled and qualified teachers and administrators. But I also believe that just the same way that you can't be, a combat soldier for 30, 40 years. You can't be a highly effective operative, and I'm using the military because that's the other branch of the world that I understand very well. You can't be, a operator on a high level in constant combat every day, 24/7 for 10 years, and it not take a toll on you. Okay, and please don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing being a combat, soldier with being an educator. But wait a minute, actually I am. But some of you out there know what I'm talking about. There are roles in schools that you've worked at that's felt like war. Where you've given all of yourself to and in the interest of saving and protecting children and preparing them for the world. And again, that takes a toll on you. That's why it's very important to rejuvenate and practice mindfulness and make sure that you're in a good space to do the work. But you will get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm losing my edge, or I need to do something different for a while, or there are other things that I'm super interested in, passions of mine, that's nothing to explore, and I've prepared people behind me who can come in and step into these roles, or the system has a litany of people who are ready to step into these roles. But these are things we need to talk about and think about as we are considering what could be next for us outside of our present roles. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much and all this made sense. Again, this is Uche Njoku, Sneaker Principal, and thank you for joining me on this little rock formation I'm sitting on right now, and really taking a look at this beautiful view here, and this is part of my mindfulness practice and self-care, coming out here as often as I can to just engage nature and be with God and just express gratitude, gratitude for all that I have, for my family, for my wife, for my children, and again, thank you so much. Be well, and we'll talk soon, all right? Peace.